Welcome into another edition of Daily Face-Off live from La Cage in Montreal, steps away from the ice in the Bell Center, and what a night one it was at the Four Nations Face-Off. The show, as always, is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, Frank Saravalli, and Frank, last night, that lived up to the hype. If you want a tone setter, that's your tone setter.
What a night in Montreal. I mean, honestly, every facet of that game was everything that you could possibly want. I've been saying for months, this is going to be a real deal tournament. And I know that people have been skeptical. Hey, is it a glorified all-star game? Anytime these guys have a chance to put on the sweaters of their country, and there's been such a gap in international play. That's the first time in Connor McDavid's life that he's been able to play best on best alongside the best Canadians in the world. Did you not think you were going to get Connor McDavid in video game mode last night? Which he was. And then, by the way, the competition, if there is one, unspoken, we've been so eager to pass the mantle, and probably we already did in a past tense way, from Connor McDavid, from Sidney Crosby to Connor McDavid as the best player in the world. And another reminder that Sidney Crosby, 37 years old, is not going to go quietly.
Yeah, 100%. It was quite something, even just from the opening shot of Sidney Crosby during the anthem. Gave me, as a Canadian hockey fan, chills to the way that game finished. Let's get more into that game last night. It's our nightcap, and it's brought to you by JP Weisers, proud to be the official whiskey of the NHL, offering Canadian hockey fans a premium drink choice to enhance every game night experience. JP Weisers, the official whiskey of game night. And the whiskey was going down smooth for Canadian hockey fans last night, Frank.
They might have needed some in the third period getting to overtime, because we talked about this before the game, the idea that, hey, what happens if Canada somehow loses game one against Sweden? All of a sudden, you're playing for your lives in the tournament on Saturday against the United States. Now you can kind of, take a little breath here.
And I want to talk about the two Canadian heroes of overtime. First, Mitch Marner. He was a little pedestrian through 40 minutes, I think would be fair.
Yep.
But then he comes through and he has that moment and totally redeems himself. And you got Leafs fans now in our comments saying, come on, MLSE, back up the Brinks truck for that guy. He changed his view in basically one shot in half a second.
Yes. And I think, look, the big knock on Mitch Marner has been he wilts in the big moment.
Yeah.
Where's the playoff success to speak of? And then you get a night like last night. This is not the Stanley Cup playoffs. You're playing for a trophy that has no name. But to be in this environment, to be with those players, the one percenters of the NHL, Mitch Marner has been in that category both by play, production, and also pay. And so now he delivers in a big moment. And you could see not just the exhale in this building, but also the exhale among Canada now too. So pretty special moment for Marner. And the amazing part about that overtime was that Nathan MacKinnon had at least 4 grade A chances and opportunities to score. And the sequence to itself, if you watch it again, Crosby playing the puck backwards from the zone, has to scurry to the bench to be onside. There's a lot of layers to it. And there was a lot of beauty in hockey, the purest form, in watching that OT.
Yeah, it was. 3-on-3 is great. More on that in a second. We're also going to have Arpon Basu swing by in a couple of minutes here, and maybe we'll get his take on the goaltending situation for Canada as well. But the other big storyline to come out of last night, it was the fear that fan bases had around the NHL. What if one of my best players gets hurt? And Shea Theodore goes down last night. We find out after the game he is done for the tournament, so Travis Sanheim's going to have to slide in. But just first on the injury itself, obviously a disappointment. And if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, you're sitting there being like, come on, really?
And game one, too, if you're Shea Theodore. I mean, John Cooper said it best after the game, Canada's head coach, saying it's heartbreaking. I mean, there's a guy that had worked so hard for the moment who gets 1 period and 3 minutes. I mean, that's tough. The Vegas Golden Knights announcing today that he's going to be week to week with this upper body injury that's clearly some kind of shoulder ailment, whatever is connected to that, with that spill into the boards. And also puts Canada in a really interesting position here, because Travis Sanheim, he gets drawn into the lineup now. The one really nice thing about Travis Sanheim is he can play both sides, so the versatility is there, whether you had a righty or a lefty that got hurt. But just the way game one played out against Sweden, it was tough to play the last 40-some minutes without him, because it forced Drew Doughty into some awkward spots, and Devon Taves and Cale Makar. The trio of them kind of had to rejig the ice time, and to do that the last periods plus with OT, put Canada in an interesting spot with 5 defensemen.
I'll be interested to see, and it's maybe more of a conversation for tomorrow, but what they do with the pairing. Sanheim, a pretty good skater. I'd be curious if maybe him with Parayko to overcome a little bit of that, move Doughty up with Morrissey.
I don't think so. I think you put Sanheim with Doughty, and you keep Morrissey with Parayko. I love the balance, big guy, little guy, and then you're not touching Taves and Makar. So that's Canada's top D pair, and I'd leave the second one intact as well and just have him slide into Shea Theodore's spot.
A couple of the rule changes that the NHL had, boy, did they work out nicely. Not only do you have the 3-2-1-0 point system, so
before we get to that, just speaking of rules and injury replacement, because Canada's now down to 6 defensemen, they'd have to drop below that number in order to add another player. Canada was permitted today to contact the next man up, so to speak, and say, hey, you're on alert. You might be on a beach in Cancun, but you could be here in Montreal or Boston in relatively short order. So the hope, of course, for Canada and every team in this tournament is that you don't have someone else go down. But some player got a call this morning after watching that game last night with a few Coronas that they might be in action soon. So definitely a bit of a jolt to the system, I would say, for whoever that is.
So I mentioned the 3-2-1-0 point system. That now comes into play because Canada only gets 2 points for the victory versus 3 if they would have won in regulation. But we also saw the 10 minutes of 3-on-3 pay off because let's be honest, if that game would have ended in a shootout, Frank, that would have been a little disappointing to end it. But the 7 minutes of 3-on-3, I know Nathan MacKinnon was like, I don't know, it's tiring, whatever. Still, that is a way better way to end a hockey game.
They deleted all my articles at TSN, so you can't go back and see it. But 10 years ago, literally 2015, I wrote something advocating for the 10-minute OT, just from a math perspective, because we have expected goals. We know what 3-on-3 produces. And I was saying, if you were to increase it just to 9 minutes, that would have 90, at least according to the math, 93% of games end in OT in 9 minutes. This one took 7, 606, I think was actually the number. And you would have gotten to a shootout had it just been 5 minutes. So I think as much as stars are taxed, what this should do from a strategic perspective, if you're thinking all season long, is it should play further into the hands of this game ending because coaches should have to increase the players that are going out.
It'll reward depth.
Rewarding depth and force you to come up with different solutions so you're not overtaxing players in back-to-back situations. So that should also increase scoring when you're going further down your lineup. I'm all for it. I think it's a worthy change. Anything we can do to eliminate or decrease the number of shootouts that we see is what we should all be advocating for. And it just made last night's game so much more thrilling. What I'm already starting to dream about is playoff-style OT in the championship game. Ooh. That would be electric.
Yeah, that would be something. So we're on to night 2 here at the Four Nations face-off. Finland, USA is the second matchup of the tournament, Frank. And I want to turn our attention to the article you wrote over at dailyfaceoff.com with Mike Eruzione. And I'll just read you the quote because I think it's so good. This is the best collection of American talent ever put on the ice. It's on those players now to deliver.
Yeah, and not really a shock when you think about it. The best American team of all time was a collection of college kids. So his quote was, he also said they'd kill us. He said we wouldn't get a single shot on goal. And that's not to compare eras, but the point is the U.S. has been building to this for a while. There's always competitive cycles when it comes to federations. You're not always going to be on the up, but the way they've built to this, back-to-back World Junior gold medals, the program has been on the rise. You've got Austin Matthews, one of the best goalkeepers of all time, is on track to challenge Alex Ovechkin. This is their moment. They have the youngest team in the tournament, but they have to slay the 800-pound gorilla in Canada, who all they win. And that's why when you look at this collection of American-born talent, as great as it is, they also haven't really achieved any much personal success at the NHL level. Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk, Jake Gensel 2 times. Those are the only Stanley Cup winners on the team. You look at Canada's roster, not only do they have international success, Sidney Crosby 22-0 in a Team Canada sweater.
Crazy.
Makes your brain explode. But the Stanley Cup. And then you go to Braden Toyne and Anthony Cirelli and, go through the list. Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett. Like, it's loaded with those guys. Drew Doughty's still here from 2010 with Crosby. The U.S. doesn't have that, and this is their opportunity to make an enormous statement as a country that is now in line with Canada in the international pecking order for hockey world supremacy. Can they do it? Can they take a step forward, a big step forward, and actually win? Mm-hmm. Talking about silver medals doesn't matter anymore. Salt Lake City, Vancouver, that's not the name of the game. It's about winning for the U.S., and they believe they're prepared to do so. And that's why getting Mike Eruzione's take at dinner the other night for this team dinner to pass along some different messages, he's really curious to see what happens too.
Yeah, pretty cool. Check it out, fullstorydailyfaceoff.com. Let's get to our big segment for the day as we welcome in Arpon Basu from The Athletic. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972, with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. You can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program, and it all comes, of course, with their unbeatable pricing policy. Check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds, mine diamonds, and you can even apply for the Charm Diamond Flexity card and get approved for your no-interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. You can read his work at The Athletic. A pleasure to have you in here. And for me, Arpon, that was my first time ever watching a hockey game at the Bell Center. And I heard so many stories about what the atmosphere is going to be like. Man, that lived up to it. What did you make of the crowd and just the feel of last night?
I honestly, every time there's a moment like this in sort of a scope that's bigger than the Canadians, I feel, I guess, spoiled by the atmosphere in that building. Like, it was great. It was amazing. Obviously, Mario Lemieux comes out. It was thunderous ovation. It was a special night and one of the real special moments in this building. But this is Montreal being Montreal. I mean, I don't think there's really any other market in the league that can produce a moment quite like that. I'm not saying that it's the best or that it's anything else, but they do. Well, they do. They just do things like that better than anyone else. And especially with Mario being like basically a recluse, you don't see him ever, and for him to kind of emerge that way, it was kind of similar to how like Carey Price came out a couple of years ago at the home opener and like with a cowboy hat on, it kind of came out of the shadows and you just felt the build up. And so, yeah, incredible moment, but hearing the players' reactions to it, like Alexander Barkov just said, that's the coolest moment I've ever been a part of in my life. The guy literally was handed the Stanley Cup by Gary Bettman like a few months ago. So for him to say that is pretty telling, in my opinion. Yeah.
John Cooper, aside from ribbing you in his post-game press conference yesterday,
his favorite pastime.
Yeah. I think he said it though. He said Montreal does hockey right, and that's probably in the very John Cooper way to sum up kind of what we all experience.
Yeah, and like a perfect storm, right? Like, this is Sidney Crosby's childhood team to have that moment and for him to get the ovation that he got. And like, just a backstory that people probably don't realize, like every game that Sidney Crosby has played at the Bell Center, when they announce the starting lineup, first of all, he's always in the starting lineup here. And second of all, there's like a applause, like when you're at the symphony orchestra and the conductor steps on stage. Like, the Bell Center always applauds Sidney Crosby's name in the visiting team starting lineups, which usually get booed. And it's like basically the only guy who gets that treatment. And so
but Brad Marchand even got cheered last night, and so did Mitch Marner.
There was some boos in the Marchand goal. I definitely heard some, but there was more cheers than boos for sure. And that was the warmest reception Brad Marchand's gotten in this building for sure.
No kidding. So we spent all this time talking about Team Canada, and we didn't mention Sweden once so far in the show.
Yeah.
And
they deserve a lot of credit for how they handled that.
I was going to say, probably not a surprise because they had to play that way likely in order to have a chance to win. But the way that they kind of locked things down, it was almost to perfection. What did you see from Sweden?
Well, I mean, last day to me, first best on best since 2016. To me, the beginning and the end lived up to all the billing and the build-up, right? In the middle, Sweden did a masterful job of dumbing that game down, basically slowing it down, allowing them to get back into the game and frustrating Canada, frankly, and making them impatient and causing mistakes. And so I thought they did great. Philip Gustafsson, no one knew who Sweden was going to go to in goal, and he gave them a chance to get back in that game. He was outstanding for them. And Victor Hedman's Victor Hedman, and played 28 minutes and all of it great. And in the overtime, like time after, like seeing like Nathan McKinnon reload
4 shots,
I know,
like,
but
crazy.
Almost
no wonder
all
he
of
was
them
gassed.
Coming in one-on-one on Victor Hedman. Exactly, the one guy who wouldn't like 10-minute overtime is the guy who basically
wind
it
up
off the ice.
Yeah. But it's funny though. I sent a message to Team USA GM Bill Guerin during OT, and I said, maybe you don't want to face your own goalie on Monday. And he just wrote back, holy bleep. Like, he was unreal, but that's the only way to explain, not the only way to explain, but a big part of why that unfolded the way it did for Sweden, which brings us to the question for Canada. John Cooper has been very supportive of Jordan Binnington, as you might expect, and he's kind of hinted at he'd prefer the idea that there'd just be one goalie that kind of rides the way through this short tournament. But if you were him and you saw Binnington put together a very average game one, would you turn to Adin Hill, and can you do it against the Americans?
The thing about Binnington, and I think the reason why Canada turned to him is, yes, a couple of those goals we'd like to have back, but it counted at the end. The guy's a gamer, right? And he's a battler, he's a competitor. And in that third period, when the game was tied, he made a number of huge saves to get that game to overtime. So I think that's his redeeming quality for them. Now, would a better goaltender have allowed them to win in regulation? Maybe, but they don't have. It's not like they're brimming in way better options, right?
So I mean, it's a marginal change. From
I think the tiebreaker being the battler, the competitor, and like the borderline,
the confidence.
Yeah,
it's almost like insane confidence.
Yeah, like the borderline psychotic behavior that he sometimes displays.
The fake fighting.
The fake fighting, and just his abrasiveness and his combativeness, even with the media.
It served him really well. It's almost like a Mamba mentality kind of thing going in.
In overtime, he made a couple of plays. The one poke check, the one play not covering up the puck, and it's like, you only do that if you have Jordan Binnington's swagger.
I mean, you don't get convinced that the moment's too big for him, right? I mean, he has other faults, but that's not one of them. Like, he's not going to let that get to him. Obviously, Adin Hill is also a cup winner, but I just feel like that Binnington's got that unique character trait that allows him to kind of rise in moments like that.
And again, it's not like it was controversial to go to Binnington. It's not like Hill has been playing 9-25 in the last month. They've struggled the last month. So again, I like what you said. The tiebreaker being swagger. That's a good point.
So you think they'll go with Binnington again?
I would think so, yeah.
So I think they will, but I would still go with Hill. I would just want to find out because
Hill also hasn't played hockey now in a week or 8 days.
Okay, but neither did Sidney Crosby.
I mean, USA, Canada. You want the guy with the little FU in him, right? I mean, you kind of want that. You want that attitude.
I get it, but I also would have really liked to have won that game in regulation. And when you're up 3-1, like, you should have locked it down.
I agree. But I don't think Canada. I think Canada in general let themselves get lulled into what Sweden wanted that game to become, and so I don't think it's only on Binnington. Like, Sweden spent a ton of time in the Canadian zone, and I mean, the shots on goal story. Like, it was 7-0 at one point, and then from that point on, Sweden basically took over, and like the zone time, the possession time, all favored Sweden for a big chunk of that game.
So before you go, I know you mentioned in the press conference last night with Coop that you're not covering Team Canada as your beat during this tournament.
That's right.
Tell us what you're doing, and obviously we can read it at The Athletic, but what are you up to?
I'm covering Team Finland. We have a beat writer for every team, so I'm on Finland.
You just wanted to see Kakaniemi again?
Anyhow, the story was basically like, who's going to read about Team Finland? I was like, well, basically it's on the writer to make it a compelling story about Finland. So that's your job. That's you. Yeah. But I think it's a very similar dynamic tonight with USA Finland. Like, I mean, they're going to have to play the way Sweden did to get back in that game. And the two interesting characters to me for Finland, Patrick Laine and Jussi Saros, both of whom have struggled in the NHL so far, but both of like Finland needs these guys to catch lightning in a bottle. Saros has to be the best goalie in the tournament for them to have any chance of winning. Laine has to produce offensively for them to have any chance of winning. And the chance that either of them do that is 50-50 at best, right? And so it's like a real roll of the dice for Finland, but they don't really have a choice. It's going to be fascinating and see if like kind of the Sisu of Finland sort of shuts that game down and makes it into like a mucky neutral zone quagmire for the United States, which they are very capable of doing. Finland's done this for a long time.
Because they have the brain power to do it too.
And they have the will. I mean, these guys, Finns are notoriously proud and notoriously rise to any sense of underdog or slight or people looking on paper and saying that they can't do something. They're
not just in hockey history, just look back in like actual history
exactly.
Defending themselves against Russia. So,
right.
There you go.
Yeah, Arpin, I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for popping by.
Thanks. Welcome to my town, guys.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And it's snowy today as well. There you go. Arpin Basu from The Athletic. We're going to move along to our daily face-off inbox question. It's brought to you by JP Weisers, proud to be the official whiskey of the NHL, offering Canadian hockey fans a premium drink choice to enhance every game night experience. Whether, hey, it's a thrilling overtime win like what we saw last night on the ice here in Montreal, or a quiet night with friends, which Frank and I will have on Friday when this tournament has an off day. JP Weisers is the perfect companion for every moment of the game. Frank, I got two things for you. First, a hypothetical. If you could add immediately out of this Four Nations break one of the two rule changes to the NHL, the 3-2-1-0 point system for down the stretch, or 10-minute 3-on-3 overtime, which one would you pick? Okay.
I think from a 3-2-1-0 perspective, I don't think the league's wild about it, because think about the gap that it would create in the standings, right?
You have teams way that though. Like, think of the gap.
You might be able to make up more ground, but you'd have teams out of it way earlier, and we already feel like we have teams out of it a lot of times in November. So that it is a double-edged sword, but what I would say is one has way more of a chance than the other. And I cannot be more clear of an advocate for 10 minutes, 3-on-3. We're talking about 5 extra minutes. Some teams go to OT 20 times a year, so you're talking potentially 100 more minutes. Are you taxing your stars? Yes, but are they going to be getting paid more with the cap going up? Yes, as well.
Absolutely. All right, next one I got for you. World Cup of Hockey yesterday in 2028 announced by the NHL. What stood out to you about the announcement?
Just how much there's still to be determined. We don't know where it's going to be, other than we know that some games to start the tournament will be held in Europe. It's going to be an interesting turnaround. You're going to have teams playing games in the NHL, then flying to Europe to start the tournament, then flying back, and then potentially still crisscrossing the country. There's a lot that's to be determined. We've got 8 teams, so we know these 4 will be in. Who's the next 4? And where do you draw the line? And then the next question after that is, will Russia participate? The IIHF, of course, as you know, recently decided that they will not be playing in the 2025, along with Belarus, World Championship. Does the IOC for 2026 Olympics in Milan uphold that same thing? The other complication to that is, with this tournament specifically, Finland and Sweden made it very, very clear to the NHL, if Russia's in this tournament, we're out. So you're also potentially dealing with that, but it's still 3 years away. So what if the war ends? What if a million questions to ask that we don't know the answers to? And so all we know is when and how many teams are going to be in. And then there's a whole lot of other things to be determined.
If you didn't miss the announcement yesterday, they did kind of throw cold water on the idea of Team North America, Team Europe. No, they want unique countries playing in this tournament, which then also brings you to you're going to need players who are outside the NHL playing in this thing as well.
A few, yep. And that's the other thing. This is not an IHF sanctioned tournament, so it's NHL players, but then you're going to have to pluck some from somewhere else. How do you then do that with their seasons ongoing where they're playing pro hockey? Not going to be easy. So, like I said, there's a lot to get done here, but the agreement is in place. And so now, February 2028, the amazing part about this is we've got this appetizer here with Four Nations. Next year, Olympics. 2 years after that, World Cup. Then Olympics, then World Cup. Theoretically, this should go on for a long time. So if you like what you saw last night, and if you like what you're going to see tonight and Saturday, get prepared for more, because it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that we're going to get to that, like you said, that 2-year cycle. Bang, 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 back and forth.
So good.
Yeah. I know some people yesterday were like, scrap the All-Star game, do this every year. And it's like, no. You can't do it every year. You need to miss it a little bit. You need to do it that every second year to not water it down. Let's talk about the game tonight a little bit more. For our friends at Bet365, download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Yesterday, maybe a little bit tighter than we had thought. Tonight, I think Team USA might take it to him, Frank. I'm going puck line. I'm going Matt Tkachuk anytime goal. Those two together pay out roughly plus 375. Who are you looking at on this Team USA forward group to come through and maybe find the back of the net?
Well, we talked about Brad Marchand and him being a really interesting guy for Canada with where he was situated on the lineup. I know he's high on the U.S. lineup card, but have we talked enough about Kyle Connor? I haven't. I've barely heard his name mentioned during this tournament so far. Guy's an elite goal scorer and is on track to be right in that neighborhood of 100 points. He's been excellent for the Winnipeg Jets, and he's playing with top-end players. So I really like Kyle Connor to have a big tournament and a big night, and I'd be curious to ratchet up the spread here. And instead of 1.5, I think the U.S. wins by 4 or 5. So I know Finland is going to try and lock it down. I don't think they've got anywhere near the same talent as Sweden, and we know their defense isn't as good. And Saros has been average this year, so I think he's going to be under attack and assault, kind of very similarly in the first few minutes. And then for Finland, it's going to be trying to hold on for dear life.
Yeah. If you want to bring it up to a 3.5 goal spread, it's plus 270 on Bet365. I know. The next leg up, 4.5 is plus 550, but juice it up with a few other.
A little tasty.
Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time, Frank, and Arpon kind of touched on it. How cool was that moment last night? It's a great spot to end this sort of day one recap show. Mario Lemieux coming out to the crowd. You and I were in the building, heard that crowd pop on his name, and then the Mario chants. That was unbelievable.
Les Magnifiques in the building. Look, we don't get to see Mario Lemieux all that much. He doesn't do much media.
He's not front-facing like a Wayne Gretzky or whatever.
And he's mostly divested himself from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just the connection, obviously, between Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby, having played together, been his billet dad, and obviously been so close throughout his career, to have all that go together with a Quebec audience and to hear the Canadian Canada Canadian national anthem in French, there's nothing quite like it. So it's I called it spine tingling. It really makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and to have legends like that, and not alone, the ovation that Teemu Selanne got, and when you think about Daniel Alfredsson being a longtime Ottawa Senator, not far from here, he gets a roar in this building. And Mike Richter, of course, from Team USA, I thought a really nice touch from the NHL to open up this tournament, and just special. That's the only word I could use. And to see the pride on these two guys, and to see, the ovation that could have gone on for a long time for Mario Lemieux, to have him wave in Sidney Crosby, like, okay, end this. I think it just speaks to the humility that he has.
Yeah, it was quite something. Quite frankly, perfect opening night at the Four Nations Face-Off. We'll continue to have you covered, whether it's on the web, dailyfaceoff.com, or right here on the Daily Face-Off. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a show. Frank Cervalli, our producer, Pat Pop, and Kylie Remchuk saying enjoy the game tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you like that video, do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the Daily Face-Off YouTube, because we have tons of great content, from exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick to instant analysis and breaking news with our Daily Face-Off insider, Frank Cervalli, on Daily Face-Off Live, to your go-to morning duo, Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen, on Morning Cup of Hockey. Plenty of great content, wall-to-wall, team-to-team, all the way across the entire league. And you won't miss it if you subscribe.